Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly before Captain Jorda N. Ravik as she stood on the command deck of the stellar Voyager, flagship of the Galactic Consortium's 12th exploration fleet. Her scaled skin shimmered under the soft blue lighting as her triple-lidded eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of growing impatience among her species, the Taurians. 3 cycles wasted mapping this sector, she muttered, mandibles clicking softly. Nothing but space dust and unremarkable asteroids. Captain, First Navigator Drezek called out, his voice buzzing with unexpected excitement. Anomaly detected at coordinates 38421107. It's substantial. Enravik strode to his station, her powerful tail swishing with interest. Natural formation. Negative, Captain. The structure is too uniform. Reflectivity patterns suggest processed metals and artificial composition. The command deck fell silent. The Galactic Consortium had encountered 17 distinct civilizations during its expansion, but finding unknown technology drifting in empty space always brought a moment of collective tension. Main display, Enravik ordered. The holographic projection materialized before them, revealing a massive silhouette against the backdrop of distant stars. Even from afar, its purpose was unmistakable, a warship of extraordinary proportions. Its design spoke of both elegance and devastating power, with sharp angles and what appeared to be massive weapon emplacements along its obsidian hull. Run comparison with known vessel types, Enravik commanded. Science Officer Pelter's tentacles danced across her console. No matches in our database, Captain, however. She paused, compound eyes widening. Material composition shares similarities with artifacts recovered from the Orion sector believed to be of human origin. A collective murmur swept through the command deck. Humans, a species known only through fragmented records and archaeological findings. A civilization that had apparently mastered interstellar travel centuries ago, then vanished without explanation approximately 200 years past. The consortium's historical archives contained precious little about them. Bipedal mammals, surprisingly adaptable, technologically innovative, and apparently quite adept at warfare. Are you certain? Enravik asked, her voice lowering. Probability exceeds 87%, Captain. The alloy composition matches what little we know of their technology. Enravik studied the image. If this was indeed a human vessel, it represented the most significant archaeological find in decades. Prepare a boarding team, she decided. Our best scientists and security personnel, we investigate directly. 3 hours later, Enravik led a team of 14 across the void between their ship and the derelict vessel. Their shuttle docked with surprising ease at what appeared to be an external airlock. The alien mechanisms adapted to their approach despite being centuries old. Ingenious design, remarked Engineer Vorton, his crystalline body refracting light as he examined the docking mechanisms. These systems shouldn't still be operational after so long. Remain alert, warned Security Chief Grizzlek, a massive furry quadruped whose ancestors evolved as apex predators. We know nothing of human defense systems. The airlock cycled with a hiss, revealing a dark corridor beyond. Their helmet lights cut through the darkness, illuminating an interior frozen in time. Unlike abandoned vessels they had explored before, there were no signs of battle damage, emergency evacuation, or catastrophic failure. Everything appeared orderly, as though the crew had simply stepped away momentarily. Life support systems inactive but structurally intact, reported Pelter, consulting her scanner. Atmosphere thin but non-toxic, supplemental breathing recommended. They moved deeper into the vessel, passing through corridors lined with what appeared to be crew quarters and technical stations. Everything remained in place, tools laid out for use, personal items stored neatly, even what looked like drinking vessels still sitting on desks. It's as if they just vanished, whispered Vorton, examining a workspace. Enravik felt growing unease as they continued toward what sensors indicated was the command center. The ship was enormous, far larger than any vessel in the consortium's fleet. Its corridors seemed to stretch endlessly, marked with symbols in an unfamiliar script, presumably human language. The command center was a spacious chamber dominated by a raised central platform surrounded by concentric circles of control stations. Dormant screens and panels lined the walls, their designs elegant yet clearly built for efficiency in crisis situations. Remarkable engineering, breathed Vorton, running his crystalline appendage over one console. The layout suggests multiple redundancy systems and rapid response capabilities. Junior technician Riznar moved to what appeared to be an auxiliary station, curiosity overcoming caution. his tentacle brushed against a panel that suddenly illuminated at his touch. I didn't, he stammered as lights flickered to life throughout the command center. Step back, barked Grizzleck, drawing his weapon. The ship groaned around them, a leviathan awakening from slumber. Ancient systems activated one by one, displays flickering with static before clearing to reveal information in human script. A deep humming vibrated through the deck plates beneath their feet. Minimal power restored, announced Pelter, reading from her scanner. Main systems remain offline, but we have access to information databases and basic functions. Enravik approached the now active console cautiously. Can you interpret any of this? Pelter worked with her translation algorithms. Partially, this appears to be the ship's designation and status. She paused, mandibles twitching as she processed the information. It calls itself the ESV Prometheus. According to these logs, it was the flagship of something called the Earth Defense Coalition. Earth, the human homeworld, murmured Enravik. What else? Last log entry dates, converting to our calendar, approximately 203 years ago. The final command was something called Protocol Lazarus. I cannot determine its meaning yet. Security Chief Grizzleck, who had been scouting the periphery of the command center, called out sharply, Captain, you need to see this. In an adjacent chamber, they found a secure door that had partially opened when power returned. Beyond it lay a corridor leading deeper into the ship's heart, to areas not shown on the basic schematics they'd mapped. This section appears heavily shielded, noted Pelter. Our scans couldn't penetrate it from outside. The decision to proceed was made with little discussion. This discovery was too significant to leave unexplored. They followed the corridor to a chamber unlike any other on the ship, a hexagonal room with a raised platform at its center, upon which rested 7 cylindrical pods of some kind. Unlike the rest of the ship, this chamber showed signs of dedicated power, with subtle lights still blinking on its systems. Preservation units, asked Vorton, approaching cautiously. Pelter scanned the closest pod, her expression shifting to one of shock. Captain, I'm detecting life signs, extremely faint but present. Impossible, whispered Enravik, moving closer to look through the pod's frosted viewport. Through the cloudy surface, they could make out the dim outline of a figure, humanoid, perfectly preserved against time itself after centuries of isolation. No stasis technology can maintain integrity this long without maintenance, Grizzleck growled skeptically. This one has, replied Pelter, and according to these readings, whoever or whatever is inside is still alive. Enravik stared at the pod, feeling as though she stood at the threshold of something momentous. After centuries of silence, they had not only found a perfectly preserved human warship, but potentially living humans as well. Prepare to transfer one pod to our research vessel, she ordered quietly. The others remain secured here. Whatever secrets this ship holds, the consortium must understand them. As they prepared to move the pod, none of them noticed the subtle change in the ship's background hum or the brief flicker of light on a secondary system panel. A silent signal broadcasting into the void, announcing that after centuries of sleep, someone had found what had been so carefully hidden. The awakening had begun. The research vessel Quantum Insight hummed with activity as scientists from various species of the Galactic Consortium gathered around the human stasis pod transported from the ghost ship just hours earlier. The ancient device now sat in the center of the main laboratory, surrounded by scanning equipment and curious eyes. Chief Scientist Tuvox adjusted her ocular enhancements, the 6 thin tendrils on her head undulating with excitement. After 20 years of studying fragments of human technology, she finally had something intact, and possibly even a living specimen. Remarkable engineering, she commented, running a scanner over the pod's control systems. The power efficiency is beyond anything in our current technological spectrum. Cellular degradation is minimal despite centuries of operation. Captain Enravik stood at the back of the room, arms crossed, watching intently. Can you open it safely? Security Chief Grizzleck stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the pod. Captain, I must again express my concerns. We know humans were a warrior species, if this is some kind of soldier. Your objection is noted, Chief, Enravik interrupted, but this discovery is too significant to ignore. If a living human exists, imagine what we could learn about a civilization that vanished at the height of its development. Tuvox's assistant, a young scientist named Jal, called out from a nearby console. I believe I've decoded the stasis protocol. It's elegant. The pod has a self-contained system that gradually refreshes cellular structures using minimal energy. That's how it maintained integrity for centuries. Tuvox moved to examine his findings. Can we access its memory banks without revival? I believe so, Jal answered, connecting a data bridge to the pod's interface. Their information architecture is surprisingly compatible with our systems, almost as if. A sharp alarm cut through the air as red lights flashed across the pod's surface. The metal shell began to heat rapidly, and vapor escaped from previously invisible seams. What did you do? Demanded Enravik, rushing forward. Nothing, Jal protested frantically, working his console. It's activated some kind of emergency protocol. It thinks the occupant is in danger. Grizzlek drew his weapon and barked orders to the security team. Everyone back now. The laboratory erupted into chaos as scientists scrambled away from the pod. A countdown appeared on the pod's display in human numerals, quickly translated by the ship's computer. 10 seconds until complete revival. We can't stop it, shouted Tuvox. The process has safeguards. Interruption would kill the occupant. The countdown reached 0. With a hiss of escaping gas, the pod's top section slid open, releasing a cloud of cryogenic vapor that temporarily obscured its contents. As the mist cleared, they saw a figure lying motionless inside, unmistakably human, just as the old records had described. Bipedal, with golden-brown skin and silver-streaked dark hair, wearing a form-fitting black uniform with unfamiliar insignia. For several tense seconds, nothing happened. Then the human's chest rose sharply as it drew in a deep, gasping breath. Its eyes snapped open, dark and intense against its face. In a blur of movement that none of them had time to react to, the human was up and out of the pod, moving with impossible speed for someone who had been in stasis for centuries. Before anyone could process what was happening, the human had disarmed the nearest security officer and stood with the weapon trained on the group, back against the wall. Don't move, the human said in a deep, husky voice that the translation system struggled to interpret. The language was recognized as an ancient human dialect, but the accent was unfamiliar. Enravik raised her hands slowly. We mean you no harm. I am Captain Enravik of the Galactic Consortium. The human's eyes darted around the room, assessing each alien species present, the exits, the equipment. Their gaze settled on the stolen weapon in hand, examining it briefly before returning to track the group. What year is it? The human demanded. Tuvok stepped forward cautiously. By your Earth calendar, approximately year 2781. The human's expression remained controlled, but a flicker of shock passed through their eyes. 200 years, they murmured almost to themselves. Then louder, where are we? What sector? Quadrant 9, Sector 23, replied Enravik. Approximately 70 light-years from where we found your vessel, the Prometheus. The human stared at her. The Prometheus is intact. Yes, we discovered it drifting. You were the only life sign we detected aboard. Something in the human's posture shifted subtly, a minute relaxation that the more observant aliens detected. They lowered the weapon slightly, though still kept it ready. I am Commander Nadia Harlow, Earth Defense Coalition Special Division Hyperion. The human's voice grew stronger with each word. Where are the other human ships, the colonies? A heavy silence fell over the room. Enravik glanced at Tuvox, who gave a small nod. Commander, Enravik said slowly, according to our historical records, Earth and its colonies fell approximately 200 years ago. There was a cataclysmic event. No human survivors were ever confirmed until now. Your species was believed extinct. Commander Harlow stared at Enravik with an intensity that made the captain's skin prickle. For a moment, she feared the human might attack in denial or rage. Instead, Harlow closed her eyes briefly, her face a mask of control. Protocol Lazarus, Harlow said quietly. It was activated then. We found that term in the ship's logs, Tuvox offered cautiously. What does it mean? Harlow slowly placed the weapon on a nearby table and stepped away from it, a gesture of trust, albeit a calculated one. It was our final contingency plan, she explained, her voice steadier now. When it became clear that Earth would fall, we scattered sleeper ships, colony vessels hidden throughout the galaxy. I was left aboard the Prometheus as guardian and executor. Guardian of what? Asked Grizzlek, still suspicious. Harlow's eyes met the security chief's, of humanity's legacy and its greatest weapon. Weapon? Grizzlek tensed again. Not what you think, Harlow replied. The Prometheus itself is the weapon, and I am its control system. Tuvox moved closer, professional curiosity overriding caution. You were linked to the ship somehow. Neural integration, experimental. I was one of 7 successful candidates. Harlow tapped her temple. My mind was partially merged with the ship's tactical systems. In emergency situations, I could become the ship, directing all systems simultaneously with thought-speed reaction times. The aliens exchanged glances, trying to comprehend what she was describing. None of their species had achieved such integration with their technology. "Why were you left in stasis?" Enravik asked. Harlow's expression darkened. "Because what destroyed Earth might return, I was left as both warning system and last defense." "What destroyed Earth?" Tuvox asked, the scientist in her needing to know. "We called them the Void Eaters," Harlow answered, her voice dropping. "They weren't like you physical beings with bodies and ships, they were something else. Something that consumed worlds and turned space itself inside out. We fought them for 15 years before Earth fell." As if on cue, an alert sounded throughout the ship. The communications officer's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, urgent transmission from Outpost Delta 7 on the edge of the Norillion Expanse. They're reporting unusual spacetime distortions and loss of contact with 3 scout ships." Harlow's head snapped up, eyes suddenly alert and focused. "The Void Eaters," she whispered, "they've returned." Enravik looked at the human with new understanding and growing alarm. This wasn't just a historical discovery anymore. If the human was right, the very threat that had destroyed Earth had returned, and the consortium had just awakened the only being who knew how to fight them. "I need to return to the Prometheus," Harlow said, all traces of disorientation gone. Immediately. For the first time in her career, Captain Enravik felt truly afraid of what lay ahead. They had found a ghost ship and awakened its guardian, only to discover that both were keys to a war they hadn't known was coming. The conference chamber aboard the Stellar Voyager buzzed with tension as Captain Enravik assembled her senior officers and representatives from the Galactic Consortium's High Council, who joined via secure holographic projection. Commander Harlow sat at the table, her human form drawing curious glances from everyone present. For most, this was their first time seeing a living human, a species previously known only through historical records and archaeological findings. "Reports from 5 more outposts confirm similar disturbances," announced Communications Officer Zeptri, her luminescent fingers moving across her data pad. "Spacetime anomalies followed by loss of contact. The pattern matches the disturbance at Outpost Delta 7. Harlow studied the star map projected above the table, her eyes tracking the pattern of incidents with grim recognition. "It's them," she said quietly. "The same approach pattern they used in the Sol system. They're testing defenses, looking for weaknesses." Consortium Counselor Vrex, an ancient being whose crystalline body contained millennia of wisdom, leaned forward in his projection. "Commander Harlow, our scientists report these anomalies could be explained by natural phenomena, perhaps quantum fluctuations in the fabric of spacetime." "That's exactly what our scientists said," Harlow replied, a hint of bitterness in her voice. 2 months before we lost Mars, 1 month before the outer colonies went dark." She gestured to the map. "This is precisely how it began before, small disturbances that your scientists will explain away until it's too late." Security Chief Grizzleck's fur bristled as he voiced what many were thinking. "You speak of these Void Eaters, but we have no evidence they even exist. These could be natural phenomena or known enemies testing new technology." Harlow's face remained calm, but her eyes hardened. "I watched them consume Venus in hours, the Jupiter colonies in days. I lost my entire family during Earth's final evacuation." She stood and approached the star map. "You have no evidence because they leave none, no survivors, no ruins, just emptiness where worlds once existed." Enravik raised a hand to quiet the growing murmurs. "Commander Harlow, tell us everything. What exactly are we facing?" Harlow took a deep breath. "We never truly understood what they were, not biological, not mechanical. Our best scientists believed they existed partially outside normal spacetime." She pointed to where the disturbances had been reported. "They create tiers rifts where our reality meets theirs. Through these rifts, they extend what we called tendrils, energy structures that consume matter and energy alike." "That's not possible," objected Science Officer Pelter. "Matter cannot simply disappear from the universe." "It doesn't disappear," Harlow replied. "It's converted into something else, something that fuels their expansion. We tracked exponential growth patterns. Each world they consumed made them stronger, able to consume more." She turned to face the assembled aliens. "Earth wasn't their first target. We found evidence they had consumed at least 7 other civilizations before reaching our solar system. We tried everything, nuclear weapons, antimatter bombs, even experimental gravity weapons. Nothing worked. Conventional attacks passed through them like they weren't even there." "Yet you speak of a weapon," Counselor Vrex observed, "something you believe can stop them." "The Prometheus isn't just a warship," Harlow explained. "It's a carrier for what we called the Phoenix Protocol, our final solution. When everything else failed, our greatest minds created something new, a weapon that could fight the Void Eaters on their own terms." "What kind of weapon?" asked Enravik. "A reality disruptor," Harlow said. "Something that could reach into their dimension and tear them apart just as they were tearing apart ours." The weapon generates a controlled dimensional collapse, essentially creating a black hole that targets their specific energy signature while leaving normal matter intact. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. That kind of technology is beyond even theoretical physics in our understanding, Tuvok said, her scientific curiosity clearly piqued. It cost us everything to develop it, Harlow replied. Entire planet's resources, millions of lives in test zones that went catastrophically wrong. By the time we perfected it, Earth was already lost. The Prometheus and 6 other ships like it were our last hope scattered across the galaxy, waiting for the Void Eaters to return. And the other ships? Asked Enravik. Harlow's expression grew distant. I don't know, we lost contact during the final battle. If Protocol Lazarus worked as designed, they should have remained hidden, their guardians in stasis like I was. Counselor Vrex's projection flickered as he consulted with others off-screen. When he returned his attention to the group, his crystalline features had hardened. What you propose, Commander Harlow, is that we allow you to reactivate a weapon of mass destruction based solely on your testimony. A weapon that, by your own admission, could potentially tear apart the fabric of space-time. I understand your skepticism, Harlow acknowledged. But every moment we delay gives them time to grow stronger. The anomalies you're detecting now are just the beginning. Within days, entire systems will go dark. The conference erupted into heated debate, with various council members arguing for caution, further study, or immediate preemptive strikes against the anomalies. Through it all, Harlow remained silent, her eyes fixed on the expanding pattern of disturbances on the star map. Finally, Enravik raised her voice above the others. Enough. While we debate whatever these phenomena are they're spreading, I propose a middle path. We return Commander Harlow to the Prometheus to assess the weapon's capabilities while our fleet establishes a defensive perimeter around the affected sectors. I support Captain Enravik's proposal, said a new voice. All turned to see Counselor Thax, representative of the militant Zorian collective, whose species had evolved in the harsh radiation zones of their home system. If these Void Eaters are real, conventional weapons will be useless. We should at least understand what options the human weapon presents. After further heated discussion, the Council narrowly approved Enravik's plan. Within hours, the stellar Voyager was en route back to the Prometheus, accompanied by a growing fleet of consortium warships. As they approached the ancient human vessel, Harlow stood on the observation deck, staring at what had been both her home and her prison for centuries. Your council is divided, she noted as Enravik joined her. Some of them don't believe me. Would you believe such a story without evidence? Enravik asked. No, Harlow admitted, I wouldn't. Yet you seem certain these anomalies are your Void Eaters. Harlow touched her temple. The neural link never fully deactivates. Even in stasis, part of me was still connected to the Prometheus sensors. I felt them before that specific distortion in reality. It leaves a signature that nothing else matches. This weapon, can it truly stop them? Enravik asked. It can hurt them, Harlow said carefully. Whether it can stop them entirely depends on how much they've evolved since our last encounter. The weapon requires all 7 Guardians to reach full potential. But you said you don't know if the other Guardians survived. Harlow's expression grew determined. Then we make do with what we have. 1 Guardian, 1 ship might be enough if we strike early enough. As they docked with the Prometheus, alert signals flashed across the consortium ships. Lieutenant Drezik's voice came over the comm system. Captain, massive distortion detected in the Krell sector, larger than any previous reading. We're getting visual data now. The observation screen flickered to life, showing a distant star system. As they watched, a strange darkness spread across the scene, not like a cloud or a ship, but like reality itself was being unraveled at the edges, revealing something unfathomable beyond. It's beginning, whispered Harlow, her face pale but resolute. They're no longer testing, they're feeding. Enravik felt a chill run down her spine as she understood the true magnitude of the threat they faced. How long do we have? At that expansion rate, 3 days, maybe 4 before they reach populated systems. Harlow's eyes reflected the growing darkness on the screen. I need to reactivate the Prometheus primary systems. Now. As they hurried toward the ancient warship, Enravik couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking a dangerous line, potentially unleashing a weapon that might be as destructive as the threat it was designed to counter. Yet the alternative was to watch as the darkness spread, consuming everything in its path. The awakening of the ancient weapon had begun, but whether it would be their salvation or their doom remained to be seen. The Prometheus hummed with newfound energy as Commander Harlow moved through its corridors with practiced familiarity. Captain Enravik and a select team followed, watching in awe as ancient systems awakened at the human's touch. With each passing minute, the massive vessel transformed from a derelict relic to a formidable warship. Main power grid at 60% capacity, Harlow announced, her fingers dancing across control panels in the ship's engineering section. Weapons systems initializing, neural interface chair preparing for synchronization. Science Officer Pelter monitored the process through her scanners, mandibles clicking in amazement. The power output is extraordinary. Your civilization's understanding of energy manipulation far exceeded our estimates. Necessity drove innovation, Harlow replied without looking up. When conventional weapons failed against the Void Eaters, we had to rewrite the rules of physics. On the observation deck of the Stellar Voyager, Consortium officials watched with growing concern as real-time footage showed the darkness spreading across the Krell sector. 3 inhabited worlds had already gone silent, their populations presumed lost. The evacuation of outlying colonies is proceeding, but we cannot move billions of citizens in time, reported Counselor Vrex, his crystalline form vibrating with tension. If these Void Eaters continue their current expansion rate, major population centers will be reached within 48 hours. Security Chief Grizzleck, who had remained skeptical of Harlow's claims, now stood speechless as he watched actual footage of a small moon simply unravel. Its matter didn't explode or collapse, it seemed to fall away in layers like reality itself was being peeled back. By the 7 moons, he whispered, she was right. In the heart of the Prometheus, Harlow led Ravik and her team to a massive chamber they hadn't discovered during their initial exploration. A central platform housed what appeared to be a command chair surrounded by concentric rings of technology that pulsed with blue-white energy. The neural interface, Harlow explained. From here, I can become the ship, directing every system simultaneously with thought-speed reactions. In combat against the Void Eaters, even microseconds of delay meant destruction. And this Phoenix protocol you mentioned, asked Ravik. Harlow approached a sealed chamber at the far end of the room, the culmination of humanity's scientific achievement and our greatest sin. She placed her palm against a scanner and the chamber illuminated, revealing a spherical device approximately 1 meter in diameter. It seemed to shimmer between states of matter, sometimes solid, sometimes resembling a liquid or gas. The reality disruptor, Harlow continued. It creates a controlled tier in spacetime calibrated to the exact frequency of the Void Eater's dimensional signature. Think of it as a targeted black hole that affects only their form of existence while leaving normal matter intact. And this worked against them before, Tuvok asked, the scientific curiosity in her voice tempered with caution. Harlow's expression darkened, partially. We destroyed several of their larger manifestations, but Earth was already lost by then. The Prometheus and the other Guardian ships were meant to be our last line of defense should they return, she paused. But the weapon was designed for all 7 Guardians working in concert, with just 1 ship, 1 Guardian. I don't know if it will be enough. And if it's not, Ravik asked quietly, then we buy time for your people to evacuate as many worlds as possible. Harlow's resolve was absolute, but I won't go down without a fight. A communication chime interrupted them. Captain, came Lieutenant Drezik's urgent voice, the Consortium fleet reports accelerated expansion of the anomalies. They've changed pattern, moving directly toward our position. Harlow's head snapped up. They've sensed the weapon, they remember it. She moved swiftly to the neural interface chair. We're out of time, the Prometheus needs to deploy now. Wait, Ravik said sharply. My crew is still aboard, we need to evacuate them first. There's no time, Harlow insisted. The Void Eaters are coming for us specifically. I need to take the ship to intercept them before they reach populated systems. A tense standoff ensued as Consortium security personnel raised their weapons uncertainly. Captain, Pelter interjected, checking her readings. The anomalies are indeed changing course, accelerating toward our position at an impossible rate. Estimated contact in less than 20 minutes. Ravik made her decision. Begin evacuation procedures immediately. All non-essential personnel return to the Stellar Voyager. She turned to Harlow. We'll assist you. This isn't your fight, Harlow said. It became our fight when these things entered our space, Ravik responded firmly. What do you need from us? For the first time since her awakening, something like hope flickered across Harlow's face. Your ships need to maintain distance, at least half a light minute. When I activate the disruptor, anything closer might be affected by the dimensional cascade. As the Consortium fleet organized into position, Harlow prepared the ancient warship for battle. The Prometheus awakened fully, systems that had lain dormant for centuries coming online with surprising speed. Ravik watched from the Stellar Voyager's bridge as the human vessel transformed. previously dark sections illuminated, revealing intricate patterns of energy flowing across its hull. Weapon emplacements extended from hidden compartments, and a shimmering field enveloped the entire ship. "It's beautiful," murmured Navigator Drezek. "And terrifying," added Counselor Vrex, who had remained to observe. "To think human technology reached such heights." Their admiration was cut short as space itself seemed to ripple before them. The darkness they had observed from a distance now manifested directly, a tear in reality through which something unfathomable began to emerge. "By the ancestors," gasped Communications Officer Zeptri, "what is that?" The void beyond the tear wasn't simply blackness, it was an absence, a negation of existence itself. And moving through it came shapes that defied comprehension, not solid objects but patterns of energy that seemed to fold and unfold through dimensions beyond normal perception. Aboard the Prometheus, Harlow strapped herself into the neural interface chair. "Initiative neural synchronization," she commanded. "Authorization Harlow Phoenix 7 Alpha." The chair reclined as connections extended, linking directly with the implants in her brain. Harlow gasped as her consciousness expanded, merging with the massive warship. Suddenly, she wasn't just Commander Harlow anymore, she was the Prometheus itself, aware of every system, every particle of its being. Through the ship's advanced sensors, she perceived the Void Eaters in their true form, creatures of pure entropy, feeding on the order of our universe to fuel their own chaotic existence. They recognized her, recognized the weapon that had hurt them before, and they came with focused malevolence. "They remember us," Harlow's voice echoed through the communication systems, somehow both human and mechanical simultaneously. "They fear us, good." The Prometheus accelerated toward the growing tier in space-time, weapons charging. Conventional armaments fired first, not because they would harm the Void Eaters, but to measure their response patterns. As expected, the energy beams passed harmlessly through the entities, disappearing into the nothingness beyond. "Initializing Phoenix Protocol," Harlow announced. "Reality disruptor charging. Estimated time to full capacity 3 minutes." The Void Eaters seemed to sense the threat. Their amorphous forms surged forward, tendrils of non-existence reaching toward the human vessel. Where they touched, reality itself began to unravel. "Hull integrity compromised in sections 12 through 17, reported the ship's AI. "Dimensional stability failing." "Rerouting power to dimensional stabilizers," Harlow responded, her thoughts becoming actions instantaneously through the neural link. From the stellar Voyager, Ravik and her crew watched in horror and fascination as the battle unfolded. The Prometheus was surrounded by the encroaching void, parts of its structure seeming to flicker in and out of existence where the enemy's tendrils made contact. "It's losing," Grizzlek observed grimly. "One ship isn't enough." Just as hope began to fade, space rippled again, not with the unnatural tear of the Void Eaters, but with the familiar signature of faster-than-light travel. A massive ship emerged from the distortion, its design unmistakably similar to the Prometheus. "Another human ship," gasped Tuvox. "Impossible." A second vessel appeared, then a third. Within moments, 6 massive human warships had arrived, taking formation around the embattled Prometheus. "This is Guardian Kazuo of the Phoenix Rising," came a new voice over the communication channels. "Looks like we're late to the party, Harlow." "Guardian Raman of the Defiance reporting. The Shanghai Collective picked up your activation signal. Took us a while to wake up." One by one, the other Guardians announced themselves, the last survivors of humanity, preserved for centuries for this very moment. Aboard the Prometheus, Harlow felt tears streaming down her face even as her consciousness remained merged with the ship. "The backup protocol worked," she whispered. "We're all here." The 7 human vessels moved in perfect synchronization, forming a precise geometric pattern around the dimensional tier. From each ship, a beam of energy unlike anything the consortium scientists had ever witnessed connected to a central point. "All Guardians, synchronize disruptors," Harlow commanded. "Target the primary nexus of the breach, on my mark, now." The combined energy of 7 reality disruptors created something new, a controlled collapse of spacetime that reached into the very dimension from which the Void Eaters emerged. The creatures writhed in what could only be described as agony as their form was systematically unraveled by the human weapon. The tier in reality began to close, forced shut by the dimensional pressure created by the disruptors. The Void Eaters fought desperately to maintain their foothold in normal space, but the combined power of all 7 Guardian ships proved too much. With a final surge of energy that temporarily blinded all conventional sensors, the dimensional tier collapsed completely. When visibility returned, the Void Eaters were gone, and the 7 human ships floated in formation, their hulls glowing with residual energy. In the days that followed, the Galactic Consortium came to terms with what had occurred, and with the revelation that humanity had not entirely perished. The 7 Guardians, each with their neural link to their respective ships, represented the last living humans in the galaxy. "What will you do now?" Ravik asked Harlow as they stood in the observation lounge of the Stellar Voyager, watching the 7 massive human vessels in formation nearby. "First, ensure the Void Eaters are truly gone," Harlow replied. "Then, perhaps find a new beginning. Each Guardian ship carries genetic samples, the building blocks to potentially restore our species someday." "The Consortium would welcome you," Ravik offered. "Your technology, your knowledge, but most importantly, your courage." Harlow smiled faintly. "Humanity was far from perfect. We created weapons that could tear apart reality itself. We sacrificed worlds to develop the means to fight an enemy that many believed was a myth until it was too late." She looked out at the stars. "Perhaps our legacy should be both a warning and a hope, a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying weapons are necessary when facing extinction." As the Consortium fleet prepared to escort the human vessels to the nearest major world, a new understanding spread throughout the gathered species. They had discovered a human ghost ship and learned why it was both feared and respected, and in doing so, perhaps saved the galaxy from a threat it never knew existed. The 7 Guardians of Humanity stood watch once more, sentinels against the darkness between dimensions, carrying both the legacy of their lost civilization and the seeds of its possible rebirth.